Hello and welcome to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. This week we are focusing on the anguish plight of home buyers. What can the home buyers do against these builders who have defaulted on their flats, on the flats that they've saved up for to live their retirement lives in? And of course, some of these builders have come up with some very ingenious excuses. Some have pleaded insolvency, others have been jailed, and even have the temerity to use this as a pretext to get out on bail, saying, how can we deliver the flats from behind bars? Well, they never delivered them in the first place, didn't they? That's why they went behind bars. So today we are going to be discussing what can the home buyers do to get our flats back, and why does the Supreme Court have to finally step in? Why hasn't the government done what it should have been doing? Joining me for this is Dilip Cherian, Management Guru. We have Pawan Shree Aggarwal, he's the Amicus for the Unitech Home Buyers. We have Col Bhupinder Malhi, he heads the RWA of Amrapali Sapphire. And also joining us is Sourav Roy, he's a lawyer for commercial disputes and insolvency. Dilip, my first question to you, why does the Supreme Court have to step in? Why couldn't the government do anything? We've got, at least the governments of Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, it's even there in Rajasthan, in Punjab, in Bangalore.
The strange thing is that the central government has done a certain amount of legislation and put in place certain regulations. But compliance actually belongs in the hands of the states. And the states which you mentioned, except for one of them, all of them are controlled by the central government. In a sense, they are the same party.
Well, UP is a late entrant, but yes.
One should have seen much more focused action by the states, and that's a real problem. Governments have the primary responsibility of making sure that customers are not cheated. Consumers are the real focus of this entire thing, and there is no doubt that a lot of building has happened at extraordinary land prices during a phase of boom. Also, while many of these people are genuine home buyers, don't forget that a reasonable proportion of them are also speculators who have, encouraged builders like this to get into this kind of situation. I mean, builders and working in tandem with people like this have ridden the market and have tried to, and many of them have made solid money during this period of time. So the Supreme Court cracking down is in a sense a last resort, and that's not the way administration ought to be done. Somebody should be blamed, and the blame squarely lies in the hands of those who are responsible for monitoring and maintaining records of what's going on in every sector.
Okay. Pawan, you have been the Amicus for Unitech and you've got some success. I believe the court has now directed the home buyers to give in a list saying that we will either ask for a refund or their flats back. Meanwhile, the CEO, MD of Unitech is in jail.
Yeah.
Update us.
Yeah, it's a good move. In fact,
and congratulations, you got some success.
Yeah, because in fact it was also I have been following this matters with Unitech for last 2 years, and have been seeing the court proceedings for almost since 2015, and since then I have seen the people thronging to courts, going to consumer forums, coming to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court has been kind enough to at least get their money back. Now the situation would have risen that they have seen every day, almost every week, there's 1 or 2 petitions or 3 petitions in court where the people are home buyers against Unitech or some builder. They wanted to have some kind of permanent solution to this, or to send some good message at least to the builders that enough is enough. So keeping that in mind, and the fact that the matter has been caught up in a place where these people are behind the bars and they are up for bail to court, the court has found it that it's the best time that a solution needs to be found out at this juncture. So therefore, they have now roped in all projects of Unitech. It is not only Delhi NCR which is being considered; it's all project of Unitech which is being scrutinized, and it has been made open to all people that they can put up their options to refund or possession, and based on that there will be a considered decision by the court that what is to be done as a future action. Now for that, just to update on the last hearing, that since I appeared for the first time as Amicus on the yesterday itself, I suggested a court that there are 17,000 buyers which we are looking at, and it would be not be very proper that we have everything by doing it on a courier basis or something like that. We can have a very technological way of having a portal, etc., and that will ease the problem for even the courts will have the data immediately on a time bound manner, otherwise it will go on dragging the process. So court was very kind enough and they have permitted that a portal be made where everyone can put up their options, and that will be made available to the court for the considered decision. This is how the things are being proceeding.
In the Unitech case.
In the Unitech case.
Colonel Malhi, you are heading the RWA in Amrapali, but you are also bringing together an initiative where all the home buyers can come together on one platform, regardless of which builder.
Yes, as you are aware that most of the projects are delayed by 4 to 5 years. So most of the buyers have been fighting in small groups. So what we are trying to do, we have created a foundation called Radical Realty Media Foundation, and under that banner we are trying to get all these smaller buyers organization together, so that we can take up the case with the government and we can take legal recourse also, because the builders have been taking advantage of the fact that most of these organizations, smaller organizations, they have not been able to fight effectively against them.
Okay.
And if we talk of Amrapali specifically, for instance, the project which I am representing was supposed to be completed by December 2012. We are already 5 years behind the schedule.
But you have moved into that project without a completion certificate.
That is second part of it. That actually there are 1309 flats which were supposed to be built, out of which only 440 have been handed over, and without any completion certificate. And when we approached Noida authority that these projects, these flats are not being maintained with the essential services, like for instance, there is no sewerage system there. There is no housekeeping staff. The lifts are inadequate, and those lifts are also most of the time down because of there is no preventive maintenance being carried out. Lift entrapments are very frequent. Sewerage system is getting accumulated, which is a health hazard. When we have taken up these cases with Noida authority says ki you people, we are not aware that this project is occupied. So
but you are paying electricity bills.
We are
so
paying
how
electricity bill also to the tune of 17 to 18 lakhs per month. So they are saying that you have moved in without our concurrence.
So you are squatters in your own houses.
Yes, that's right.
Let me bring in Sourav in this. Sourav, a bit larger picture if I would bring you in. As I was talking, some builders have declared insolvency. Now, of course, the government has taken a strong stand. What exactly is happening on that front?
Right. So what has happened is that there are primarily three conflicting interests, as you've heard. One is, of course, the home buyers who've put in many cases, their life savings. They could be speculators in some cases. They want the flat, or they want at least the money back. You have the banks which say that, look, as a builder, you've taken money from us. If you can't pay that money, then we'll initiate insolvency, liquidate the assets, and recover the money that is owed to the banks. Then you have the authorities, the Yamuna authority and the Noida authority, because we are discussing the NCR region, which say that, look, these builders have built on lands which actually are owned by the state. These are leasehold properties. So the banks can't have these properties sold because the builders don't even own them. Now the larger picture is, you see, all three of them are technically correct. The home buyers are correct in saying they want the flats back. The bank is correct in saying that, look, if the builder can't pay, we'll initiate insolvency, sell off the assets. And the Yamuna authority is also correct in saying that you can't sell off assets that are not held or owned by builders. Now this is where the court is therefore required to step in, because at least the Supreme Court can act in the interests of justice. And it is not always bound by the four corners or the letters of the statute. So it is the Supreme Court which can actually trace the money, look at whether the money has been siphoned off. If the money has gone from one entity in a group to another entity in a group, and if insolvency is actually just a pretext to not pay back. And you've already seen that in the order of 11 September in the JP Infratech case, where the Supreme Court has actually said that JP Associates, which is not the entity under insolvency, should at least provide for a corpus of rupees 2,000 crores. So we need to have innovative, active and dynamic solutions, because if you confine it to just the letter of the law, then people, especially home buyers, must be terribly affected. So there has to be a way, and I'm sure the court will find a way, to make sure that the money is traced and that these builders don't resort to insolvency as just a pretext to not pay back to banks. And if that money can be traced, then at least, at the very least, the home buyers can be paid back, or that money can be used to actually finish the unfinished projects.
Correct.
And the flats be handed over to home buyers, at the same time pay money to the banks and the government authorities. It's still early days, but I think the reason why the court has had to step in is because the government, in a field like real estate, which requires it to be very active and dynamic, has actually waited till the very last moment. It's waited for NPAs to build up. It's waited for these builders to not comply with environmental laws, other real estate laws, and that's really left us in this kind of a quandary.
Yes. Dilip, it's also waited for these builders to spend the money they've taken from the home buyers into other businesses. For instance, Unitech went into telecom, and when Bas JP invested the projects into other businesses also. How do we streamline this?
Many of these businesses who are insolvent are just the top headline grabbing big companies. This is a story which is of great sadness, which is spread throughout the country. Besides these builders, there are a whole host of other builders who are neither delivering flats, nor providing the services, nor complying with what the promises they made to buyers. In fact, a lawyer at the Supreme Court the other day said to me that the Supreme Court is now looking on many days like a bit of a lynch mob, because hundreds of home buyers are attempting to throng there, and this is a court which is supposed to adjudicate on constitutional matters. So the court is also being overburdened by the number of PILs and all kinds of things which are coming from all kinds of directions with good reason. I'm saying there's good reason why they should be going there, but the fact is that this is not the way business should be done. Looking at the business side, and to answer your question, many of these builders, whether they are small players or big players, have diverted money. And the fact is that there is money adequately, or maybe a portion of money available somewhere or the other if one goes behind the corporate veil. The fact is that these companies have, or these individuals have diverted money, there are assets, and there are all kinds of things which can actually be traced pretty fast if somebody puts their head down to it. Corruption also slows this down. Builders still have volumes of money with which they can obstruct the course of any investigation or any probing or any attempt to get behind the veil.
I think Dilip really nailed it, Pawan. The fact is that they have the money. They have the money to corrupt. They have the money for farmhouses. Unitech, Sanjay Chandra, he has a house in Mayfair Gardens. He has a farmhouse. He's still throwing his parties before he went to jail.
Correct.
So how do we get that money back to where it really belongs to us?
That is what the entire idea is all about when the court is proceeding. Even as Roy has said that in JP, he has asked JP Associates to pay 2,000 crores. The idea and the message is that you have money.
Right.
You have money because you have taken 90% more, 90% of the amounts of the people, and now you say I don't have money. Where has that all those money gone? It is not that it'll vanish in a thin air, and then you'll just go out saying that I don't have money, I can't refund it to the people at this juncture. If you'll refund, I can't give possession to other people. It is not there, because you must have also calculated by that time that you must be earning this huge profit out of this. Where is those money gone? We have seen projects where the people out of say if there are say 500 buyers in that particular project, we have, and that money which could have been by a sale consideration 700 crores, they have paid 600 crores. Where is that money gone? Ultimately, that's a question of investigation where the court is now pinning them down in all these cases. So that you have to bring it back, be it any way. This is one way you can say that if you have money thrashed at some other places, please bring it back to India and bring it back for the home buyers to be paid. Now that message is going to be sent very strictly and strongly, and they have said we have lands, we can sell the lands to bring the money, but how they will sell it, the court said I have no concern. You bring the money, show your bona fides, get the flats ready. If you want the flats ready, pay the money back if you can't. So that message is very, very clear.
Okay, before we go in for a break, Pawan, one quick answer from you.
Yeah.
By when do you think the home buyers will see some ray of light or some any timeline?
So therefore the courts are being on the timelines, like creation of this portal is within a week time, then possibly a 15 days or a 20 days window for people to put up their options, and then thereafter we will see some kind of decisions where the court has been directing them to pay some amount to the court or taking a considered decision, because that is something which is within the realm of the court to decide. And I think something should move around in October there so far as Unitech is concerned, and then Similarly, for JP, they have posted in November, so things should move within a period of 1 month or 2 months at some stages now.
Okay, some movement finally. We're going to keep this discussion going, but just a short break. So stay with us. Hello and welcome back to Roundtable. We are here discussing the heart-rending plights of home buyers who gave all their savings to the unscrupulous builders who've just walked away with it and left them with no flats. Colonel Mai, before the break, we were discussing the plight of the buyers, but I want to also focus on the RERA Act. Now, that has come in from 2016.
Yes.
So, the projects that were earlier are not really affected by it.
Yes.
But the builders have found a loophole in this, you're saying?
Yeah, before I address this RERA, I'll just carry forward what these two speakers have said. There is no dearth of funds, as we know. There is a requirement of carrying out a forensic audit, which I believe a group of ministers nominated by the UP government has promised that they will get this forensic audit done and they will carry out an investigation where these funds have been channelized. That was one. Second part about RERA. I personally feel that RERA, UP government has diluted the RERA to some extent. For instance, as per the central government rules, the penalty clause was 10% for all the contraventions, whereas UP government has said up to 10%. It can be 0% also, it can be 1% also. That is the first dilution. Second thing which has been mentioned in the RERA, anybody who has applied for completion certificate prior to notification of RERA in October 2016 will not be covered under RERA. So, all these builders, they knew that this act is going to come, so they applied for completion certificate irrespective of the fact whether the project is complete or not. What government should have done at that point of time, somebody should have carried out a physical check whether this particular project is eligible for applying for completion or not.
Correct,
So,
before this.
Yes, please.
Okay. Sourav, can I also bring you in on this? The fact is that how do we get, the discussion that we were having earlier about personal property being attached, how to get the money back from these guys?
Yes, yes. I think the first point is that if the money has been siphoned off or diverted to other projects, it has to be traced and brought back. There's no other solution. The reason why that is the only solution is, you see, look at the stakeholders in this case. You have the home buyers. It would be extremely harsh upon individual home buyers if you were to say that, look, you must forego your flat. So that's not a feasible solution. It would make no economic sense and would be against the Insolvency Act if you told the banks that, look, even if you don't have a plan, you must forego a part of the debt. Because the credit cycle would get hampered, the banks would onward not be able to lend. So that's not a feasible solution in law or in finance. You can't really tell the state government, in this case the state of UP, Yamuna and Noida authority, to take a hit, because they are also right in saying that when these builders owe money to them, why should the lands owned by the state government be sold?
Fair enough.
So therefore the only solution is that you conduct a forensic audit and you trace where these builders have used the money. And if you can follow the money trail, and if the forensic audit is properly held, then obviously you will have an idea on what sort of interest they have created, whether it's been transferred to related entities, whether that money has been transferred offshore, if it lies in other projects, if they've built land, and really trace that money back. The difficulty we are facing right now is the other three people involved, the home buyers and the state government and banks, can't really take a hit because of the unscrupulous deeds of these builders. So the tracing and the forensic audit and recouping the money that has been diverted becomes very important. Now there was one point that I wanted to say about the RERA. You see, what has happened now with the builders is they say that, look, we are in a sector where anyway there was a slump, then you have GST, then you have demonetization, then you have RERA, so we are really suffering. even if you take their arguments to the highest, the difficulty that I have is, you see, what the government has now done is it has acted akin to a doctor which lets the cancer really spread to all parts of the body, which hasn't really acted in due course of time when it should have. And now it seeks to sever every single part of the body where the cancer is spread at the same time. So it wants to tackle black money in property, it wants to tackle builders not complying with norms, it wants to tackle builders diverting funds through demonetization, through RERA, all at the same time. So naturally, this is going to have some kind of an impact where you see a sudden slump in this particular sector. But that's no excuse for saying that a forensic audit should not be conducted. That's no excuse for saying that where the money can be traced and where the diversion can be followed by way of a trail and a forensic audit, that shouldn't be done. And I think that is in a sense what the Supreme Court has indicated, at least in the initial hearing, where it has said that a related entity should provide for 2,000 crores. Going forward, it is given about 45 days time. The next hearing, as you know, is in November. If by then there is no solution to the problem, then the court will have to do what the government hasn't done, which is really to look into this entire mess and try and go back in time and try and make sure that the best interests of the home buyers as well as banks as well as the government entities are secure.
Dilip, the court is doing what the government hasn't done. We discussed this earlier also, but is forensic audit now the best way out really?
Forensic audit is a great way out, but it's going to be slowing down the process. What builders are betting on is that by 2018, the pressure will build up on government because elections will be on their heads and the pressures will be diluted all around. And don't forget that builders are among the big money bags who fund several elections. So that's something that we need to keep in mind. Now, to the point that is just been made, let me say that there are two people who have actually defaulted in terms of their duty. The builders primarily and the state governments whose duty it was to monitor. So if there's got to be a haircut, these are the two people whose haircuts the public should be demanding. So the courts and the home buyers who should be demanding a haircut from somebody, it's a haircut that the state governments and these authorities who own the land should actually owe. So I think that banks are well within their right to foreclose on some of these properties, and though legally what is being said is right, that the land belongs to and is on leasehold, but I'm sure that there are others willing to buy out these projects on a leasehold basis. So that doesn't hold very much water. You can actually sell those projects and someone will buy it at obviously a discounted rate. It will increase the slump, but don't forget that today we are in a situation where we have a slump going on in many sectors. So this is one sector where there's going to be a slump, and the consequences of that are something that government should plan for ahead.
Co-developers is something that I think in the case of Amrapali perhaps is happening. Was that a good idea, Pawan?
Yeah, it is happening for all the builders now, seeing the option that they have possibly, as on the statements say that they do not have funds, they are trying to bring someone. Like even on the yesterday's hearing, even they have suggested that they are trying to bring some co-developers. Even the Unitech is saying that we are trying to bring some co-developers.
Are the co-developers coming? Are they finding anyone?
They are. In fact, I just got some message from some buyers in that regard, that for one of their projects they have some JM Finance asset reconstruction company. I don't know exactly what is that company, but then that's a company who's going to fund their project. Okay. So it's just also for them, the co-developers is also not there to service it. They are also seeing from the commercial angle. So they are only doing it for those projects, like we just discussed beforehand also, that they are only doing it for those projects where they see it's commercially viable. Correct. Where they are going to get some profit out of it. If it is not, possibly you are not going to find any co-developer for that purpose. And it is a process which possibly they are trying and exploring it. How far they are going to take it, because even in some cases which we came to know that people, they have gone for a co-developer has started it and then they have backed out in between. So all those kinds of things are there, but then ultimately what in all this process, what I understand is even though it is not even that slump in market also which we have said, it is more in a quotient of a trust deficit, which I can just name it. It's just because it has all they started it. Now there's a trust deficit. Now that trust deficit has to be converted, because everyone used to believe that I am paying it, I'll get my flat. I used to get my flat, so it continued. A lot of people went on investing. They are not used to ask them whether you had a license, whether you have a proper approval or not. They said, yes, you trust me, I trust you because I paid you, give me flat.
And it's a good name, Unitech, JP.
It's a good name. It's all, everyone has a good name. Everyone has made the projects. It is not that they have not made the projects. So now the question is all about that trust deficit. They say, I don't believe you now. Whatever you have earned from us, I have believed you when giving you money, all my retired savings, etc. It's a trust deficit now. You have to now answer it and get that trust deficit back. It's until you do that process where you bring back your trust deficit, things are not going to revive.
Quick last question for you as a home buyer, Colonel Malhi. What would you do? Would you want a refund or would you wait for a flat?
Before that, yes,
we're out of time totally.
Okay, fine. No, certainly we will not want a refund. We would want that. In fact, all home buyers would want that they should get their property as early as possible. And this one we are talking of, this co-developer rightly brought out. Co-developers will only come when there is a financial viability. That is one. Second part is now CREDAI is trying to step in as a co-developer, and CREDAI is saying they will pump in 25 crores per project, but they want additional FAR. That FAR is not available in most of the projects because that has already been availed by the builder. So what is the future of those projects where this FAR is not available? So those projects will still hang in limbo, I feel. And thirdly is
last.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, we're totally out of time.
Okay,
I'm sorry
fine.
to interrupt, but as you can see, there seems to be some silver lining in the form of courts intervening. But apart from that, the builders really are holding home buyers to hostage. And until the government steps in, the government also acts in tandem with the courts, then I believe something may happen. But until then, keep watching this space. We're going to keep you posted on what all that's happening in this realm at least. Stay with us, and that's all for now. Thank you for watching this show. We'll see you again, same time next week.